Good evening. I'm Van Gosselin, president of the Equality Garden Club, and I'm here to welcome you to our meeting of October the 21st, 2020. I hope everybody is comfortably settled in for the next hour or so. It's nearly Halloween, and tonight's topic is about bats. But I've been assured that you will have no qualms or fears, so rest easy. On tonight's agenda, we're going to have my opening remarks, and followed by Carl Scherer, who's our Vice President of Programming. He will introduce our speaker, Shari Blissett-Clark, and she's going to be talking about bats in, I guess it's in our backyards. Anyway, there'll be a Q&A after that, and Carl will then come back on screen with our future programs and events for the club, and then I'll come back again and close off with our remarks. I'd like you to go and be aware of various things during this virtual meeting. Please keep your audio on mute and turn your video cameras off. If you experience a short time lag between the speakers, that's not uncommon. This is with our technology here. Be patient. We'll connect with you as soon as we can. Now, if you're on Zoom, you can post your questions through the chat button that's located at the bottom of your screen. And note you will be chatting to everybody, so keep your comments proper. If you get disconnected by any chance, you can rejoin us. Just sign back on as you did initially, and it'll reconnect. We'll readmit you into it. If you happen to be joining us on Facebook Live, welcome. Thank you very much. And you can post your questions as a comment on the video. We ask you that you share this video so that others can also join. We really appreciate that. We're going to have two moderators who are going to be assisting the audience. On Zoom, Carl Scherer will be assisting in collecting questions which are submitted by the audience through the Zoom chat. And on Facebook, Mario Rios will be assisting in collecting questions submitted through the Facebook Live. A reminder on all this, we are recording and archiving this meeting on our website. So you will be able to review this presentation by going to the equalitygardenclub.com. You don't have to take notes. But if you want to refresh your memory, or if you found something really interesting, you can come back to us and you're going to have it there in our archives, available to everybody. Speaking for myself now, I'm looking forward to tonight's presentation. Having been in the audience waiting for the speaker to begin, I do appreciate that impatience. But bear with me, I have a couple of updates for our membership, and we'll be through them in just a few minutes. First, let's remember that November is the month of elections, and the Equality Garden is no exception. We are having our annual meeting on the November 18th, when the club members will be selecting the new executive board. Our executive board from now on will be going on for 2-year terms. While there are 7 positions on the board, we also have 7 nominees so far. They are all the current members of the board. I'm very pleased to say we've been working well together, and all of us would like to continue doing that, and we're submitting our names together. To refresh your memories, there's me, Van Gosselin, as president. Linda Gordon is our vice president of membership. Paul Durbin, a former president, is volunteering to be our vice president of the programming for this type of thing. And Mario Rios is our treasurer. Patricia Elson will be our secretary, if you so decide. And trustees Ruthie Rowley and Chuck Nichols have also decided to come in to help represent the general membership. Per our bylaws, any member in good standing who wishes to nominate or to run for a position at the annual meeting may do so. And if you do plan to do that, or would you like to do that, please inform Linda Gordon, our membership VP, or myself, and just go on to you can contact us directly on our website at info@equalitygardenclub.org. All right, speaking of elections, which is our own here, our club encompasses a wide range of lifestyles, of ethnicities and ages and everything you can think of. Our bylaws encourage all members to have a voice. We really want to hear from you. There's no question in that. They're written with that in mind. We want you to express your thoughts. Most, if not all of us, have gardens, and we nurture our gardens in order to obtain the best results. In our daily lives, voting is how we get the best for our communities. Please be sure to vote, because our country, our county, our cities depend on each and every one of you. So please if you haven't done so, get out there and vote. And I'm not being partisan in this at all. I treasure everybody's opinion. Beyond the elections, I'd like to update you on some of community outreach. Last Wednesday, on October the 14th, members of the Equality Garden Club went out to work and refreshed the atrium garden located in the Wilton Manors Elementary School. The school has been able to adequately maintain the garden, has not been able to adequately maintain the garden because of the COVID-19. The last time that we helped along with them was last December. So the club now has offered to periodically maintain this area for the remainder of this year and into next year. And we're waiting for their response, which I'm sure will be positive. This is a very rewarding effort on our part because of the children who delight in the butterflies and the birds and all the creatures that come into the atrium as a result of our gardening efforts. So I'm very pleased, but this is a delightful thing for us. I really like it. I'm so glad some of our members do this. Our Million Orchid Project, our Million Orchid Project is also online here, right? And it's continued to be receiving donations, and we're very, very happy about that because this is helping us to reintroduce native orchids with a special emphasis on Oakland Park and Wilton Manors. Last Thursday, Mario Rios, who chairs our Orchid Commission, made a presentation to the Wilton Manors Leisure Services Advisory Board for our proposal to install native orchids into the historic Richardson Park, which happens to be the home of our annual Tropical Plant Fair. The presentation was met by the advisory boards with unanimous approval. They loved it, and my compliments to Mario for putting out a fine presentation. The advisory board will now forward their unanimous opinion to the Wilton Manors City Commission in order for them to make a formal acceptance of it if they're assuming, and we assume that they will be doing that. So this is good. We are expanding beyond Oakland Park now, which we've already been active with. In a few days, on Friday, October the 23rd, weather permitting, thank you, I hope we don't have to take a boat there, the City of Oakland Park will be hosting a presentation ceremony in recognition of the $1,000 donation that the Equality Garden Club is giving to them. This will enable them to purchase several hundred more orchids for their already established parade of orchids. So we're having a good month, as we do every month, and I hope you're all having as good a month as I am. Thank you. I'm going to step back now and let you enjoy the upcoming presentation, and I will join you in that audience to listen to our guest speaker. Following me will be Carl Scherer, our VP of Programming, and he will introduce Shari to you. I hope you have a pleasant time. I'll see you towards the end of the meeting. Enjoy yourselves. Good night.
Great. Thank you, Van. Members and guests, backed by popular demand, we have Shari Blissett-Clark with us tonight. Shari loves bats, as you may know. Her life revolves around them. Shari is currently the president of the Florida Bat Conservancy and operates Bat Belfrys. It's a nonprofit organization focused on bat house research and development. She builds and installs bat houses throughout Florida with her superhuman help of her husband, John, also known as Batman. Shari's topic tonight is bats are fascinating mammals that play critical roles in the health and diversity of Florida's ecosystems. The presentation tonight will expose the secret world of bats, dispel myths and misinformation, and reveal superpowers that bats use to provide unparalleled benefits to mankind. Shari will explore where bats live, what they eat, and their vast contributions to human health and medicine. And Shari will discuss ways that homeowners can help bats survive and thrive in the yards and neighborhoods. Please do remember, if you have questions during the presentation, if you're on Zoom, to generate through Zoom or through Facebook, we will be capturing those and we'll present those to Shari at the end of the presentation. The good news is I've already received several questions, excuse me, prior to tonight's meeting. With that, I would like to turn this over to Ms. Shari Blissett-Clark. Thank you.
All right, I think I'm on. Everyone can hear, hopefully everyone can hear me. Maybe you can see me. Good evening. As Carl mentioned, I'm all about bats, and more so now than ever before, now that bats are facing some new challenges with the COVID-19 misinformation, and we'll talk about that a little bit further into the program. I do have a little bit of information about that to share with you. I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in. I want to start my PowerPoint program. Hopefully I can get this to come up without any problems. Stand by. Let me see if I can get my screen to share. There we go. And here we go. See if we can get this up here. All right. All right, everybody should just see a black screen now, right?
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Okay, so of course, the name of the presentation this evening is Bats in My Florida Backyard. So let's go ahead and get started with this. I'm going to take my own little picture off, but everyone should still be able to hear me with no problem.
Yes,
one of the things we want to talk about this evening are the different types of bats that homeowners in your area may be seeing in their yards. And there's quite a few. Bat diversity in Florida is pretty broad compared to some other states. And it's partially because of our southern latitude. We have lots and lots of different types of vegetation and wildlife, some of them exotic and some of them native. And some are more welcome than others in our yards, but Florida's bat species are certainly welcome in everyone's yard, and they are there whether you know it or not. Today in North America, we know there's 47 species of bats. All of them, all 40, well, not all, 46 of those bat species, the vast majority, are insectivores. And what that means is they eat nothing but insects, and they come out and hunt at night, typically between dusk and dawn. The only time they don't come out and hunt is if it's pouring rain or if there's a lot of wind. Anything wind in excess of 25 knots usually will keep bats from hunting. They are good, strong flyers, but they're small mammals, and so they can't withstand winds over about 20 to 25 knots. So we see them staying in the roost at night when it's storming or if it's raining, but they do come out and eat insects virtually every night. The single species of bat in North America that is a pollinating bat is called the Mexican long-nosed bat. It actually forages around the US-Mexico border. And you can kind of see that here on your north. If you know where you are in North America, you can find that border pretty easily. These bats are the only known pollinator of many important cactus species, including the blue agave, which is a very, very important animal for pollinating those agaves. They obviously are the source of tequila, so that's always a good thing. So let me move on to the next slide. Here in Florida, we have 13 native bat species, all of them insect eaters. In no particular order of importance, I have them listed here: the big brown bat, the tricolored bat, evening bats, Perimyotis, northern yellow bat, the Seminole bat, the Velvety free-tailed bat, the Brazilian free-tailed bat, the eastern red bat, Florida bonneted bat, the hoary bat, southeastern myotis, and last but not least, the Raffinesque's big-eared bat. Now, not all 13 of these species occur in the same part of Florida. Here in what I call South Florida, which is represented here in this rectangular box, pretty much from the southern part of Brevard County across the state over to the northern border of Pinellas County, and then southward is what I call South Florida. Part of it's Central Florida, but all 7 of the species listed here actually do occur in that particular range right there. And they are bats that you would see any time of the year. They do not migrate out of this range during the winter time. They're pretty much there year round, and you can see them anytime you're out looking for bats in the evening. So the Brazilian free-tailed bat, the evening bat, tricolor, the Velvety free-tail, the Florida bonneted bat, the northern yellow bat, and the Seminole bat. Those are our common bat species in your range. Before we get started talking about those specific bats, what I'd like to do real briefly is just kind of talk a little bit about what a bat actually is, because so many people aren't really clear about this. Bats are actually mammals. They have fur, they're warm-blooded, they give birth to living babies, and mothers feed those babies milk from 2 mammary glands. They have 4 fingers and a thumb on each hand, as you can see here in this little drawing. They actually belong to a group of mammals called Chiroptera, which is a Greek terminology that translates to hand wing. And you can clearly see in this little cartoon figure here how the bat's wing structure is actually formulated by an arm, a thumb, and 4 fingers. They also, just for interesting, they also have 5 toes. Every bat in the world has 5 toes. So they actually are not rodents. Even though some bats do resemble mice in some way, sometimes by size or ear shape, or some of them even have a little tail that hangs down, they are not actually rodents at all. These mammals we know belong to their own group called Chiroptera, and they are actually very closely related to early primates like lemurs. And some of the very early arboreal primates that we still have here on, in different types of habitats. So we know they've been here a long, long time. And of course, they're the only mammal that can actually fly. Females give birth typically, most species, to 1 pup a year. Baby bats are called pups. When pups are born, they typically weigh about 1/3 of the weight of the mother. Putting that in human terms, for those of us who can't do the math very well, that's equivalent to a 125-pound human woman having a 38-pound baby. So it's a very large infant when it's born. The mother does feed it milk many, many times during the day. And by the time that pup is about 6 weeks of age, it's typically about the exact same size as its parent. They don't learn to fly until they're about 8 weeks old, and that has to happen with their mother's instruction because they are mammals and they don't have feathers for lift. Their wings are made of a double layer of soft, supple skin. And in order for them to get airborne, they have to take a literal leap of faith. They have to fall head first out of the roost, plummeting toward the ground to get airspeed, and then quickly deploy their wings and turn their thumbs upward to get airborne. So it's literally a leap of faith for bats to learn how to fly. And it takes a mother to help them learn to do that, the pups. Several species of bats have been clocked flying in level flight in excess of 99 miles an hour. So they're not just amazing little flying mammals, they're also the fastest animal on the planet, bar none. These animals are self-powered flight in level flight. These are not like peregrine falcons that climb to high altitudes, fold their wings, and use gravity to help them attain that speed. These guys are flying level. So very, very fast flyers. Most bat species in Florida hunt at a speed anywhere from 40 to 60 miles an hour while they're actively hunting. So they're very, very quick, and that makes them hard to see sometimes. Today in the world, we know there's about 1,400 different species of bats on Earth, and they live on every continent except Antarctica. We have lots and lots of different kinds of bats. None of them are blind. That is a misconception that a lot of people still believe. All bat species can see really well. And some of them see much better than we can, of course, especially at night. They do not get entangled in human hair. That's another common misconception, especially here in Florida. We have lots and lots of people who wear perfumes and powders and hairsprays, and we use all these scented lotions and potions and all these fabric softeners to make our clothes smell good for 14 weeks in our drawer. All of that stuff is fine and good and well because humans want to smell good to other humans. But remember that all those aromas also make you very attractive to insects. And if you go outside at night and you're wearing some of that, you're going to be very attractive to a lot of the insects that you don't really want to interact with. What bats will do is they will notice the insect activity over your head, and they will often fly over and try to eat those insects. So I believe that's how the misconception got started. People believed, especially women, believed that the bats were dive bombing them, trying to get in their hair, or they were trying to chase them away or being aggressive in some way. Nothing could be further from the truth. All they're doing is hunting insects. So kind of keep that in mind if you plan to go out on an evening or a boat ride or a night hike, or you're going to go out a garden tour in the evening, or you're going to go and do a full moon event or something like that. Best not to use a lot of aromatics, and you won't be quite as attractive to the insects. Other things, bats are not aggressive. They are very shy, gentle animals. And the reason they hide during the day is to evade a lot of their predators. Everything eats bats. Snakes, raccoons, foxes, hawks, owls, bluebirds, blue jays, crows, all the blackbird family, all the covids, all the blue jays in the jay family will try to eat bats. So there's a lot of, even mockingbirds will try to eat bats. So there's a lot of daytime predators out there. And this is the reason bats have kind of developed their nocturnal habit of eating insects and hiding during the day from all those predators. 70% of the bats on the planet are insect eaters. About 25% of the remaining bats out of that group eat fruit or pollen or both. And they also, in the process of eating fruit and pollen, they will also disperse seeds. So seed dispersal in the tropics is a really important service that bats provide to humanity. There's about 5% of the bat species we know about today on the planet that eat things other than insects, fruit, or pollen. And some of those things include things like fish. There's several species of fishing bats. There's a fishing bat in the Baja California Peninsula in Mexico that eats saltwater fish. Its exclusive diet is saltwater fish, and it'll fly 30 to 40 miles out to sea and actually hunt fish right out of the water. How it does it, we just are starting to learn about this little bat, but it is a fishing bat. There's a couple species that will eat frogs or other lizards or other types of small invertebrates. And then, of course, we do have a small number of vampire bats that do engage in eating blood. Of the 1,400 species of bats on the planet, there are only just three that engage in eating blood that we refer to as vampire bats. They're small. They typically have a wingspan of less than 14 inches. They're little animals. They live in dense tropical jungles, and they only live in Central America. So we don't see a lot of these bats to begin with. They're very specialized. And in many places where there used to be more vampire bats, they're actually becoming fewer and fewer rapidly. And we do think they're probably on their way to extinction, which is kind of sad because we have learned a lot about lots of different kinds of medications from vampire bats. And I'll kind of allude to that in a few minutes.
Hey, Shari.
Bats, yes, sir.
Are you showing different slides? Because we've been seeing the same slide the whole time.
Yeah, we're showing the same slide right now, just while I go through what makes a bat different than anything else. We'll move on here in just a second, okay?
And can you see there's a message admitting Ruthie. Could you close that? Because we can see that too.
Uh-oh, hang on a sec. I think just a minute.
Oh, no problem. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay. I saw, is that better? Are you guys good now?
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, I saw that. I didn't want to click anything and possibly lose my program, so right in the middle. Okay, so moving on very quickly, bats have the longest lives of any mammal species in their size class, typically between 15 and 30 years. Most species live at least 15 years. That's a very, very long time for such a tiny mammal. And I will talk very briefly about rabies and viruses a little bit later on, but just touching on the rabies mystique, the incidence of rabies in bats is so grossly overstated that it has gotten a life of its own over the last 100 years or so. The fact is that less than 0.5% of bats will ever contract rabies. It's an extremely small number, almost unmeasurable. And they are not responsible for most rabies transmission. In fact, I'm going to read a quote to you very briefly from the World Health Organization, from WHO, about rabies transmission. And I quote, "Of all host reservoirs, the domestic dog is responsible for more than 90% of human rabies fatalities worldwide." Close quotes. So it isn't even wildlife, it's domestic dogs that actually are the still, unfortunately, the #1 carrier of rabies in the world. So that is something to kind of put in perspective. So the truth is that bats are really, really important mammals. They're very important to their habitats. We know they've been flying through the night sky for over 50 million years. On your screen here, we have a picture of a bat from the early Eocene era. This bat is about 58 million years old, making it the oldest fossil we have of record at the moment. In Germany and in Butte, Montana, and several other places, and as well as China, there are large fossil beds where new bat fossils are being discovered every year. This happens to still be the oldest. You can clearly see here in this picture the elongated finger bones that make up the structure for the wing and the long tail. And so this we know was a flying bat, and for 58 million years, bats have been flying through the night sky. Now over here on the other side of the screen, you can see a picture of a modern day fruit bat skeleton. Now this is a skeleton that's been pinned. It's from a modern day bat. And you can see if you look at these two, there's a very little difference. They really have evolved over all of this time, very little. They do have a few minor differences. They do have a longer heel bone there. The heel bone structure is where the tail membrane attaches. There are a couple of other minor differences, but overall the bat's body structure is just almost identical to what it was 58 million years ago. So there's not much difference. Most of the bats in the world live in trees. That is a common misconception. People think all bats live underground, and that is not the case. The vast majority of bats live in trees like this one, in holes and cracks and crevices, hollows and trunks. The problem is that more and more as people spread out and encroach into these natural landscapes, we have a tendency to want to take these types of trees down because we consider them dangerous. And in doing so, we're actually removing important bat roosting habitat as well as habitat for other animals. So inadvertently, we are creating a housing crisis for bats by doing this and by taking these trees down. Some bats actually live in trees up in the canopy. We see a nice canopy here with bromeliads and Spanish moss, as well as resurrection fern. There's actually a couple of orchids in this picture as well. Bats will sometimes live in all of these types of structures, depending on the species. And if you look to the left side of your screen, you'll see the sable palm fronds. Bats also like to get, a couple species like to roost under the sable palms. It keeps them protected from predators. They can camouflage very easily, but it also protects them from rainy weather. Those palm fronds act just like a wonderful umbrella and keep the bats dry and safe. So let's take a closer look at some of Florida's bats. We're going to look at those species we talked about that live in your yard. The most common bat species in everybody's yard, no matter where you live in Florida, is the Brazilian free-tailed bat. Now, don't be misled by the name. These bats are not from Brazil. They were just poorly named over 100 years ago when they were first discovered. These are actually native bats to North America and to the Gulf Coast region. They colonize, which means they build large family groups, and these are the bats that are most often found roosting in man-made structures. Culverts, pavilions, under roadway overpasses, sometimes in old abandoned buildings, in attics where homes, the roof line might be in a little bit of disrepair. If the bats can get in, they'll get in an attic. They live under carports, lots and lots of different kinds of man-made structures. They have very dense, thick fur, ranges anywhere from black to almost blonde, and they do have a long tail that sticks out past the tail membrane, hence the name free-tailed bats. This is a bat that a lot of people looked at with the big round ears and the tail hanging down and thought they were mice because they do look a little mousy. They typically have a 12-inch wingspan, and they're about 3 inches long from the tip of their nose to the tip of their tail. So when they're not airborne, they look very small, about the size of a man's thumb, an adult man's thumb. They love moths and beetles and flies of all kinds, termites and flying ants of all kinds, and of course they eat lots of mosquitoes seasonally. Now this particular species of bat is what we call a generalist. It'll eat whatever happens to be hatching in the insect realm when it's out hunting. So it happens to be flying over an open waterway. There happens to be a lot of mayflies or caddisflies hatching out of the water, then that's what these bats are going to stop and consume. So most of the bat species in North America are generalists, but they all eat slightly different kinds of bugs. So having a lot of species in your area really creates comprehensive insect control across the board. Usually these bats will have their pups sometime in June. They have one baby a year, and that's it, just one pup. I will mention that the mortality rate on their pups is about 65 to 80%. So statistically, what that means is about 65 to 80% of the babies born every summer are not going to live to see their first birthday. And this high infant mortality rate and the slow reproductive rate of all these bats is one of the reasons the state of Florida and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has started protecting bats all across North America. Now it is illegal to kill bats for any reason, and that's a good thing because bats populations have been declining dramatically all around the nation. The next one is the evening bat. This is a cousin. This is a little small bat that often roosts with free tails. Also a colonizer, meaning it lives in family groups. It's very social. A little bit smaller bat, about a 10-inch wingspan, about 2 inches in body length. And again, they like beetles and plant hoppers and small flies and mosquitoes, all types of small moths, flying ants, and lots of other true bugs. Typically, they'll have 1 or 2 pups in April or May. This is one of our earliest birthing species. Usually, most species don't have their pups until June, July, or August. These guys go a little bit early. And they are common throughout the state. So you will find these little bats from the Keys all the way up to actually Canada. Their range goes all the way up to Canada, up the eastern seaboard. Tricolored bats, these are really interesting little bats. They were previously known as the eastern pipistrelle. Some folks may be familiar with that name, that we used to refer to them as pips. They have been reclassified as a Perimyotis, so they are now tricolored bats. They are our smallest bat, and they're one of the smallest bats on the eastern seaboard. They have a small little group of ears there and a pink face, and you can see their pink arms that contrast really, really well with the very dark, almost coal black skin on their wings. So when they're flying, it's very easy to tell this bat from other bats because of the color variation on the wing. These guys are colonial or solitary. We aren't sure. You know, they do both. They can be alone by themselves in under a rocky crevice or underneath the eaves of a building for a while, or they can be 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 bats all colonizing together someplace. They tend to go one way or the other all the time. They roost in caves and tree foliage, rocky crevices and cavities and Spanish moss, and we do occasionally see these bats in buildings, particularly in areas where there's high urban density, where there's a lot of building development and there's not much habitat. We will see all of these bat species moving into buildings. They do feed on very small insects, little tiny mosquitoes and moths and flies, and the types of flies they really like are those little no-see-ums we talk about, those little biting gnats. Those are actually a member of the fly family, and these guys will consume those close to the ground, both at dawn and at dusk. They don't hunt during the day, and no-see-ums sometimes, depending on the weather, are active during the day as well, but they can help make a big dent in the no-see-um population. They do give birth to about 2 pups. They usually have twins in May or June. The Velvety free-tailed bat. This is Molossus. What a handsome little bat. These little guys are actually transplants from Cuba. They were first found in the Florida Keys in 1994, in the fall, October of 94. We think they came in with a hurricane that whistled through at that time, and they stayed. And these little bats are not really an invasive exotic species. We feel that they are doing a natural migration. They're doing very, very well in the Keys. They don't compete with other bats. They're very social, colonial. They have very dark brown or dark gray fur. And they have about a 12-inch wingspan, again, about 2.5 inches in body length. We have only found these bats roosting in buildings here in Florida, but we do know from the studies in Cuba that they do use rocky crevices, tree hollows, and cracks and crevices and utility poles and things like that. Now, this bat's range has expanded from the Keys all the way up into Southeast Florida. So there are places in Miami-Dade County and probably in Broward County now where this bat is actually making homes. We just haven't found them yet, but we suspect that they are there and they are here to stay. They are, as I said, this is a natural migration and an expansion of range, and we think it's got a lot to do with climate change. We will see wildlife as well as plant material responding to the increase in damp temperatures and the increased warming temperatures as Central Florida becomes warmer and wetter. So we do expect to see these bats continue to expand their range over the next 50 years or so. Females give birth to just a single pup. Again, same mortality rate on all these animals, 50 to 65% on mortality, very high mortality rate on babies. This is the Florida bonneted bat, and this is the largest and the only endemic bat in Florida. And for those of you who don't know what endemic means, it means that this bat, very simply, doesn't live anywhere else but here. And it only lives in 10 counties in South Florida. It's in Miami-Dade, Broward, Collier. These are documented sightings, by the way. Lee, Charlotte, Hendry, Glades, Highlands, Palm Beach, and Polk counties. We suspect it may be able to survive in other counties, possibly Hillsborough, possibly Indian River, possibly Pinellas, possibly Brevard County, but we have not found them there yet. But we suspect that it's possible for them to survive in those locations. The problem is that this is a critically endangered bat and was listed in October of 2013 by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a critically endangered species under the Endangered Species Act. We in the Florida Bat Conservancy were listening to this bat and taking surveys on this bat 30 years ago. We were the very first organization to actually record this bat's call, this hunting call, and to identify its range. And we were doing everything we could to try and determine the population. And we were able to take our information to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and demonstrate to them the decline, the sharp, dramatic decline in the numbers of these bats over about a 20-year period, mostly because of habitat disturbance. These animals have to have a place to live, and more importantly, they have to have healthy insects to eat. And with agriculture expansion, with development going on, with hydrology being changed for roadways and other kinds of development and backfilling of wetlands, we have seen a shift in the types of insects that are active in Florida, and that has impacted the bats' ability to find food. So they are critically endangered. These are big bats. These bats have about a 20-inch wingspan when they're airborne, and they are a free-tailed bat, just like the the Brazilian free-tail, and also the Velvety free-tail. These guys are also free-tailed bats. They have a long tail that hangs down past the membrane. They're referred to as a bonneted bat because their ears are actually, their large ears are joined right at the brow, right at the base of the ears. So when you look at them head on or from the side, somebody thought, I don't agree, but somebody thought it looked like the bat was wearing a hat or a bonnet. So hence the name bonneted bat. These bats live in rocky crevices and in trees in a very, very select area, mostly pine rockland areas that are now virtually extinct. Virtually those habitats are gone in South Florida. So very, very important. We've put up about 60 bat houses in South Florida to help protect this bat. I'm proud to say that the Florida Bat Conservancy's bat house design, the design that we made for this bat specifically because of its size, has turned out to be highly successful. And every bat house that has been installed by Bat Conservation International and by our organization down in that area where we know these bats forage has gotten these bats in it within 6 months. So we're very, very happy that the bat house design is working well. We hope that's a good sign for the species. Today, we know there are less than 1,000 individuals of these bats left in Florida. So we're very concerned about this bat. And you would have it in your area potentially. The northern yellow bat, this is a solitary bat that actually is fairly large. It's the second largest bat in Florida, about an 16, 17-inch wingspan. They're pretty good size when they're flying. These bats prefer living underneath dead palm fronds, and they like to feed on beetles, large insects actually, because they have a very large, broad mouth, and they can catch large insects. The types of mosquitoes that they like to eat are those great big marsh mosquitoes, those big saltwater mosquitoes that are so seasonal, but also, I don't know about you guys, but they bite me really badly. I get a lot of reaction to the marsh mosquito bite. Females in this species will give birth from 1 to 4 pups. They are multiple birth givers. They usually will have at least twins. I have seen just 1 pup in some females, but usually it's twins or triplets. I've seen as many as 4. They will give birth sometime in May or June. So they're a good sized bat, fairly common in your area. And they're very, very pretty. They have this long golden colored fur. Seminole bats are cousins to the previous bat. They're related, much smaller bat, only a 12-inch wingspan on average and only about 2.5 inches in body length. Also feeding on moths and mosquitoes, beetles and flies. Another overproductive or overachiever, I should say, in the reproductive realm, anywhere from 2 to 3 pups. They usually have twins or triplets in May or June. They're very, very pretty, colorful bats. You can see they've got red and gray. They usually have a white collar around, a fur around their lower part of their neck. They oftentimes will have a little bit of white fur at their wrists, on their wings. And sometimes, as in this bat, in this picture, we do see some white tipping on the very tips of the fur, so it almost makes them look like they're frosted, but very, very pretty bats, very important bats for mosquito control, especially in inland areas. So we've looked at the kinds of bats that are common in your area or that should be common in your area. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about why bats are being challenged, why their survival is so critical, and some of the challenges they face as well as some of the challenges we face as a conservation group. All around the world, every state in this nation, at least, is protecting bats. Populations are plummeting. We know that populations have declined dramatically all around North America, and one of the major players in that has been pesticide applications. Both aerial spraying and land-based spraying with fogger trucks, and even individual homeowners, parks and recs departments, road and bridge departments, anybody who's out there using herbicides or pesticides to control vegetation or to control insects is actually spreading a lot of chemicals around in our properties. And this, of course, is residual in the land, the soil, and also in the waterways, as well as now some of these things we're now finding out are actually able to pollute the air as well. So this is a big deal. Insect populations are plummeting. We are getting fewer of the beneficial insects like pollinators because of this activity. We're getting more actual mosquitoes, which are typically the target species. And the reason for that is because all of the natural predators that would normally be eating the mosquitoes, either as an egg in the water or the larval stage of the mosquito in the water, or as an adult flying, those natural predators are highly susceptible to these toxins as well, and they've pretty much been killed out. And I'm talking about things like frogs and toads and turtles and fish and salamanders and lizards and dragonflies and dragonfly larvae, what we call boatmen, in the water that actually eat the bloodworms, the actual larvae of the mosquito. So there's a lot of natural insect controllers across the board that in a healthy habitat would be helping us control these insects. The problem is we've killed most of those natural predators, and we've left this great open void for these mosquitoes to reproduce and just without abandon. The other thing we know about mosquitoes, and this is something that's really become a problem, is that they tend after about 2 or 3 generations to build a tolerance to whatever chemicals are being used at the time to control them. So they're not only able to proliferate without, pretty much unimpeded by predators, but they're also adjusting to the chemicals that we're using. And so after 3 generations, we can't even kill them with the pesticide. So now we have to start upping our game with the pesticides. And you can see where this vicious circle can lead us. One of the things that bats have a high sensitivity to is chemical loads. And we are seeing a lot of bats that eat poisoned insects or that are caught in aerial spraying events like the one pictured here. We see a lot of our bat species dying, dropping right to the ground. And unfortunately, it's difficult for us to fight the pesticide. The pesticide industry is huge. They make lots and lots of money doing this. And of course, the public is very concerned about diseases that are transmitted by insects. And so there's a lot of concern about it, a lot of demand by the public that governments and agencies protect them from these types of insects. And the way they're doing it right now is through these chemicals. So we're trying to make people rethink that a little bit. We're trying to make you understand that there are natural predators out there that will return to your yard if you just stop putting out poison. And in very short order, you can create a real oasis on your property for a lot of the natural insect controllers, including birds and bats, that would come and then take care of these insect populations. And it's free, and it's safe, and it's healthy for your pets and your children and your grandchildren, and for you in particular, especially if you're a gardener. You're going to be spending a lot of time out there, probably bent over with your hands in the dirt. You probably don't want to be absorbing all those chemicals. So kind of rethink how you use chemicals in your property and see if you can't find a way to commit to reducing and eventually eliminating all of those chemicals. It would really be very helpful for bats as well as other animals. Another challenge, of course, is clear cutting. Bats and birds in particular, and anything that uses trees for habitat, are left homeless when we do this type of clear cutting. This is the development does this, roadway expansions are doing this, stormwater management does this, timber harvesting for the pulp industry, as well as other types of wood. Cypress domes are being chewed to pieces for cypress mulch. There's lots and lots of reasons that this happens, and none of them are good. So we would really like everyone to rethink the way they are taking trees down. A tree isn't just for shade. A tree is an incredibly valuable part of the landscape. And it's, in addition to that, it's great for flood control because every single mature tree will soak up between 100 and 500 gallons of water every single day, depending on the species of the tree. So that's a lot of, again, a lot of free flood control for us. So exotic predators. Hang on one second. I seem to not be able to move. There we go. Exotic predators. You know, as the human population all around Florida increases, and we're on the increase yet again, we bring our dogs and our cats and our, you know, children and our pet snakes and all these things with us. And, you know, these exotic predators, sometimes like this little kitty here, can do a lot of damage to wildlife in general, and bats and birds in particular. So if you have a cat or a dog, please, we urge you to either keep it on a leash or, especially in the case of cats, don't let it outside at night to roam, and also consider keeping it indoors permanently. Cats are much healthier when they're indoors and they're safe from all the myriad of diseases and chemicals out there that can make a cat sick. So much better to have them inside, and certainly better for the bats. Exotic diseases infecting bats. This is a picture of some bats in a cave system that are roosting in the New England area. These are, the name of this species is the little brown bat, and they're all but extinct. Back in 2006, an exotic fungus was introduced into a cave system and up in New England, in a cave system in New York. It was a fungus that was brought from Europe that naturally occurs in European cold caves. It was unknown on this continent until then, and it has infected bats and killed millions of bats since it was first discovered. We refer to this fungus as, or this syndrome you see here, this white fungus growing on the bats' mouths, on their muzzles, and their ears, and on their wings. We refer to this fungus as white nose syndrome. There is an entire website dedicated to this. You can learn a lot about white nose syndrome and the research that's being done, the steps that we're all trying to take to try and control this horrific disease for bats. There will be several bat species in North America that become extinct from this disease. It's like the final straw on the camel's back. They were already declining from other reasons, and this is going to be the final blow for many species. We are fortunate in Florida. Right now, this disease is impacting bats that hibernate in cave systems and underground. In 39 states in the lower 48 of the continental United States. So it's rapidly spread throughout the nation. Every province in Canada now has this fungus in their bat populations. Here in Florida, we haven't seen it yet. And I think the main reason is because most of our bat species do not hibernate. All of our species, particularly down where you folks are in Southern Florida, are pretty much active year round. They will go to sleep for 2 or 3 days during hurricane events and things like that, but they're not in a true hibernative state. And so because they're active year round, they tend to, you know, keep their body temperature up, and they will not be as susceptible to these types of diseases. But this is a horrible disease. The website, once again, WNS.org for white nose syndrome, WNS.org. And I would really like everybody listening to take a look at that at some time. And just get a feel for how bad this disease is, and all of the research and all the efforts being put in by many, many people who are dedicated to trying to save our native bat population, because it's highly at risk. This is a really bad disease. One of the things that of course has popped up in the last year or so is coronavirus, and there's been a lot of misinformation. There's been a lot of inaccurate blaming, finger pointing, name calling, all kinds of things that people all over the world are trying to do to make sense out of this horrible disease that is impacting so many people's lives. And we have a tendency as human beings, in my opinion, to try and find the root cause of something. We have to compartmentalize, and we need to do that and kind of box things in and understand explanations so that we know how to deal with these things. And this is just one of those things that we may never be able to prove one way or the other. What we know about coronavirus and bats at this time is that bats are a natural host to many types of viruses, including coronaviruses, as are lots and lots of other animals in the wild. And there are a couple of viruses that have been isolated that are closely related to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. But there is no actual link. There is no genetic biological marker that actually is showing that the virus started in a bat and was and did transference to another species. These are called zoonotic diseases. These types of diseases that start in an animal, then will typically go through 1 or 2 or 3 other animal hosts and mutate at each time until it can actually infect a human being. And there are examples of how this has happened in the past. This is not the first time this has happened. There are doctors right now and immunologists as well as virologists who feel that about 70% of human diseases started out as a zoonotic disease. And so this is not something that's new. It's just something that's new to us, this generation. What we do know about it is that bats also are at risk in the wild, but we also know that bats cannot pass this disease onto humans. Okay, the only way people can get COVID is from another person, period. Wildlife is not passing this disease to people. You know, this is not a case of where you're going to get COVID from a bat. That's not going to happen. It is impossible. That's just not happening anywhere. Unfortunately, around the world, there are lots and lots of people, especially in third world and developing nations, that just don't understand the science, and they have yet one more reason to hate bats and to kill them. We have seen a massive increase in illegal killing of large concentrations of bats all over the world in response to this virus, because people are just plain afraid and they do not understand this connection. What caused it to begin with? Well, they're still trying to figure that out. And you would think after almost a year of investigating with really smart people and lots of money that they would have found the link between bats and this disease if the link existed. But, you know, we have to kind of be philosophical about it, in my opinion, as humans, and say, you know, it really doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter where it started. The fact is it's now a human disease, and we have to deal with it and find a way to handle this from a human perspective. One of the big questions we see all the time in my work is people want to know if we should just kill all the bats and stop all the coronaviruses. Well, that isn't going to work, because bats are not carriers of COVID-19 or any other type of virus that we can get directly from a bat. It has to be mutated. These zoonotic diseases typically go through 2 or 3 or 4 different species before they mutate enough to be able to infect humans. So this is not a one-time jump you know, from a disease of, say, a wild animal to humans. That's just not the way this works. Indiscriminate killing of bats is not saving human lives, and it's actually not doing anything to help protect or improve human health. So, you know, we really need people to understand how this virus is impacting the bat populations around the world. And we want people to be informed about this. If you hear someone talking about this, if they sound, you know, if they're acting kind of funky about it and they think that bats are a problem, you know, honestly, the bats are not the problem. This is not the situation at all. In fact, we should be protecting bats because they provide vital ecosystem services, and we've talked about those. Pest control, pollination services, and seed dispersal. Pest control alone, over $23 billion a year here just in the United States, is what the USDA says bats are saving farmers in crop loss and crop damage. And every time the bats are out there eating the crop pests, the pesticide reduction that the farmer can do, he doesn't have to lay out more pesticides because the bats are taking care of the bugs. And so that's better for all of us. Less pesticide application, less expensive to the farmer, healthier food for all of us. And it all starts with bats being great pest controllers. They're important for biodiversity and ecosystems because they've adapted to living alongside us in lots of urbanized areas. New York City has bats, Chicago has bats, Miami has bats. All the large cities of the world have bats living in gardens and parks and communities, and they're highly beneficial neighbors. There's very, very little interaction typically between bats who come out at night and human beings who tend to not come out at night so much. So we don't see a lot of interaction, and we do know that we can have an amenable neighborly relationship with our bat friends. What can we do to help bats? Well, you can help us stop the spread of misinformation, as I've already said. Learn the facts about bats at Florida Bat Conservancy's website, which is listed here. I have additional websites coming up here in just a minute when we get to the end of the program. Protecting bats actually is really, really important as well, because There are right now, there are over 80 different kinds of cardiac and blood thinners, cardiac drugs and blood thinners that people use and are saving people's lives every day that are derived directly from research with bats. We have radar systems and GPS systems thanks to the early research that was done on bat echolocation. Bats have brought that to us in our lives. Can you imagine not having GPS in your phone? I mean, we can't even imagine that today. There are many, many researchers right now working on echolocation as it relates to people with vision problems and people who are losing their vision to either accidents or diseases. There is a device called an ultra cane that's available now. It is an echolocation device used by people who cannot see, and it's working beautifully with people. And once they train their ear to the echolocation call, then they can move freely through a landscape without having to have assistance, which is great. So those are just a few of the things bats have done for us over the last 100 years or so. Also surgical therapies, lots and lots of surgical therapies are the result of research on bats. Other things we can do to help bats, we can keep our trees in good repair. These are what our state tree, the sable palm, should look like. This is what our trees should look like. This is a healthy grouping of sable palms. Those dying brown thinning palm fronds at the bottom of the tree are actually providing nitrogen and nutrients to the crown of the tree as the tree grows upward. The reason those lower fronds start to brown and wither is because they're sacrificing their nutrients up into the growing part of the tree. If someone comes along and hacks all that off and it looks like this whole hurricane cut here, you're actually starving your trees. And I promise you that if you allow people to do this to your palms, your trees will die. It's just a matter of when. Your trees will starve. These are not healthy palms, and yet you see this type of trimming all over Florida in every habitat and landscape, and I see it all over South Florida as well. So if you have an interest in keeping your trees healthy, please, 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 please don't let someone do this to your trees, because the unintended consequences of trimming often is dead wildlife. We have here a picture of a female northern yellow bat with her 2 dead pups. This poor female had just had these babies up in the palm tree, and someone was told to trim the palm of the dead fronds. And you can clearly see this palm frond that's laying here as green as can be. It is not dead. And yet we see this all the time. Once the tree trimmer starts hacking away at stuff, he just keeps on going until there's only 5 branches left at the top of the tree. The problem is that there's wildlife in the trees, and oftentimes in the spring and the summer months when we see tree trimming at its peak, that is when we have baby bats and baby birds and baby squirrels and all kinds of baby everythings in those trees. The saddest part of this picture for me is that this is 100% preventable. Do not let someone trim your trees in the spring and in the summer. If you have to have your trees trimmed, make sure you get a reputable company, someone who knows something about the growth habits of the tree, regardless of what kind of tree it is. Invest a little in research and find someone that does a good job, and only allow them to trim your trees in the fall and the winter. That will help prevent this right here. This is just completely preventable. And for these animals that we have very few of left in the landscape, every single bat is going to count. And here we just have a whole family. This was just randomly killed because of a tree trimming. So please reconsider when you trim your trees. You also can consider putting bat houses on your property. You can put them in your garden right here, as these folks have done for insect control on their plants. You can put them up or sponsor bat houses in green spaces and county parks, municipal parks, ball fields, even schoolyards have bat houses all over the state now. You also can, if you live in a gated community or you have common green space, as in this case with a common area for the people who live in this neighborhood, they may not want to allow you to put bat houses exactly on your property if you have 0 lot lines, for example, but oftentimes there's a park or a nearby area that you can put bat houses up and your whole neighborhood would still benefit. Bat houses do very well beachside. This is a bat house right on the breakers in Cocoa Beach. The woman's doing gardening in raised beds because there's no dirt, it's nothing but sea sand. But she has bats in that bat house doing a great job of helping control the insects. And of course, anywhere there's water, docks, boat houses, the ends of piers and pilings are all great places to put bat houses. Bat houses over water do remarkably well. We see bats really using those bat houses very, very quickly over waterways. Other things you can do, if you don't want to put a bat house up, you can just commit to getting rid of the pesticides, as I've already mentioned. You can create a pesticide-free zone in your yard. Just maybe start with one little spot, one corner. Put out a pesticide-free source of water for pollinators and for birds to use, and kind of grow it from there. You know, pesticide-free zones, you very quickly, you will see an increase within sometimes just days, an increase in pollinators and all kinds of wonderful little animals that will come and help you with your gardening. So it's well worth the effort, and you will save a lot of money. Believe me, these pesticides are expensive. The other thing you can do is, you know, don't forget to put some plants back in your property. If you have the space, plant some trees, plant some wildlife trees, plant some fruit trees, plant some understory trees that produce flowers and fruits for birds. If you don't have room for the trees, for heaven's sakes, put in flowers. Pollinators love flowers, and that's a great step forward as well. You never have too many flowers. Don't neglect putting flowers in amongst your vegetables or other types of plants you might be growing for consumption, because those bright colored flowers will draw those pollinators to your tomatoes and your other plants, so that you'll get better pollination. So these are just some ideas as well on how you can help bats without actually putting a bat house up. And of course, you can support conservation in your neighborhood, either volunteer for a local project, just pick up trash at a park or a waterway, or volunteer to put bat houses up in a nature center or at a community center. And if you can't do those things, you have mobility issues, or you just don't have the time, of course, you can always donate money to your favorite conservation organization. I would hope that you make a donation to the Florida Bat Conservancy, but if you can make a $5 donation to the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation, or to some other group, then that's great too. It all helps out. It all helps conservation in the long term. So one of the most important things, as I mentioned already, that you can do is become a bat advocate. That's one of the best ways to help bats. You can share what you've learned with your family and your friends. Here are some more websites for you to learn more about bats in particular. And of course, these organizations all have links to other organizations where you can learn more about lots of things and how everything's interconnected. You can attend your HOA meetings, your city council meetings, your county commission hearings. And I would love it if you would just attend those meetings and learn how to speak up on behalf of wildlife and wild areas. Florida is growing rapidly, and we have to have room for everyone. But one of the things that Florida is most wonderfully known for is our lovely open landscapes and our wonderful diversity of wildlife. And we need to start taking steps now to try and protect some of that. We have a lot of trees coming down every week for development. So make sure that you're an advocate for wildlife, for garden spaces, and for open spaces for the future. Finally, in conclusion, and I'm almost done, I appreciate your time and your patience, I want to leave you with some wisdom from my little bat friends. Remember that it's good to hang out with your friends. You need to enjoy the nightlife when we're all over the COVID pandemic and we're allowed to go do that again. You can learn to wing it, and remember that in everybody's life, a little bit of guano is going to happen. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and leave this up here now. And I will come back to the screen, maybe my face. There we go. And Carl, I don't know what you're doing next, but you want me to close this, or what do you want to do next?
I've got a few questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Sherry, first, one of the questions that came in is that one of our garden members has stated they had never seen bats, and even though they have a bat house and they have it by a huge mango tree and lots of lush landscape. Do bat boxes really work, and how high should they be, and best location, sun or shade, or is there some other better way to attract bats?
Yeah, bat houses absolutely do work. We have over 1,000 bat houses up all over the state of Florida, and they've all got bats in them. One of the biggest problems we have with homeowners who buy commercially made bat houses or who build bat houses is oftentimes they'll get their hands on plans that are not effective. All bat houses are not built equally, and it's critically important that a bat house not be made out of cedar, despite the fact that there are commercially available bat houses made out of cedar. Cedar is not a good wood for bats because of the aromatic oils that have a tendency to irritate the bat's skin. Also, a bat house needs to be at least 12 feet above the ground. 8 feet doesn't cut it. 10 feet is sketchy. Probably you'll not get bats. 12 feet we know is the magic number at which bats will be able to get in and out of the house effectively. We also know from lots of field research over 35 years that bat houses need to be in open, clear areas. Close to a tree is not a good place for a bat house. And the reason for that is because the canopy of the tree shades the house, and the house will not attain the interior temperature that bats are looking for. If you think about where bats roost in buildings, for example, they don't go down where it's cool in the lower part of the house. They go right to the very top of the attic or directly underneath those Spanish tiles, and where it's hotter than blazes. They love a warm roost. So the magic temperature for a bat house is 95 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit inside the bat house. If you have that bat house under a tree, it's not going to attain that temperature. Get it out in the open where it's going to get at least 7 hours of direct sunlight every day, and it'll get better you'll get better results. The other thing is that a canopy overhead is really not a great idea, because a lot of the aerial predators, as well as arboreal climbing predators like snakes that eat bats, can easily get into the bat house. So we don't typically put them with anywhere near trees. We say 20 to 25 feet away from all trees, including an overhanging canopy. So that kind of limits some people's property. Sometimes you got to be creative. If you have a lot of trees, mature trees, fruiting trees on your property, you may need to move your bat house to the front yard. You may need to put your bat house on a shared fence line with your neighbor, because oftentimes there's not a lot of trees along a fence. You may need to talk with your community about putting a bat house up at a local pond somewhere nearby your home. It may not be on your property, but you will definitely benefit from the presence of the bats as they hunt every night.
Okay, great. Another question is, adding a bat house to a butterfly garden, is that a good or a bad idea?
It's an excellent idea, because butterflies and bats are not active at the same time. So keep in mind that butterflies and daytime pollinators are active during the daylight hours. It gets to be, long shadows, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. And a lot of those pollinators have already gone to roost. They're hiding underneath branches. They bury themselves in, butterflies and other types of flying insects will bury themselves under leaves. They'll get up in a tree canopy and roost for the night. And they're well out of the way before bats will actually start to hunt. So bats typically will come out of a bat house and start to emerge about 20 to 30 minutes after sunset. So typically by that time, all of the daytime pollinators are well out of the way, and it's the nighttime insects that have started to take over the garden. So you shouldn't have any interaction at all between honeybees, native bee populations, mason bees, if you've got bee blocks or other types of bee habitat. Also butterflies, they get along very well. I have a large butterfly garden, and I've got 3 bat houses, and I've never seen a bat eat a butterfly yet. So, there's no issue with that. They get along well.
Great. In regards to population of bat houses, have you ever approached like a city park director of promoting building or in populating bat houses in parks in South Florida?
Not too much in South Florida. We do have several municipalities in other parts of Florida that are using bat houses in every single one of their parks so that they can reduce and eventually eliminate pesticides. Fernandina Beach on Amelia Island in Northeast Florida is committed to eliminating pesticides in their community. The city of Rockledge in Brevard County, the city of Fellsmere in Indian River County. There's several others. Right now we're working with Pinellas County to put bat houses up at several of their county parks and municipalities as well. So it is happening. We don't typically go out and solicit that kind of work, because we are first and foremost a conservation group. We are concerned about public education for sure. We do a lot of outreach at county commission meetings and homeowners association meetings where there's pushback against bats. We will take our bats with us, and we will go and we will discuss bats and the value of bats in communities in those situations. But we really are not in business to sell bat houses. We do sell bat houses, and all the money we get from that work does support the conservation work in the field. So we put the money to good use, but we're not actively out there trying to sell bat houses to communities. Now, if someone has a gated community or a neighborhood, homeowners association, or even a municipality that would like to have more information about that, yeah, absolutely, we'd be all over that for you.
Okay, great. Just for awareness, our garden club created the Green Initiative this year. And this is basically working between Wilton Manors and Oakland Park, where we're actually advocating the use of elimination of pesticides and going completely organic. So we actually are developing a very close relationship with both cities' park and recreation groups. And this may be an opportunity for us to even pursue this even further.
Absolutely,
so,
absolutely. Yeah, we're doing a lot of work in Palm Beach County, Dagger Wing, for example. There's what's the name of the other one that's there? Shoot, the name escapes me at the moment, but they're all putting bat houses up in their areas. We're going through their Parks and Recs department to do that. Unfortunately, the COVID thing has kind of put a hold on a lot of that work for us. We do use volunteers for our work, and for the safety of our volunteers as well as the community, we have greatly reduced our bat house work over the last 7 or 8 months. But we are looking forward to getting back into that after the first of the year. And we think at that point, it will probably be safe enough for us to get back into communities and start working with scout groups, with homeowners groups and things like that to put bat houses up. So yeah, I have a little bat in my hand. Before we forget, I want to see if I can get him to smile.
Oh, yes.
This is the little free-tailed bat. See if I can get him to.
There we go.
Free-tail. This is the Brazilian free-tail. This is our most abundant and most common bat in the state. He's a very sweet little bat. Let me see if I can.
How old is he?
This bat is about 3 years old. I've had him for a while. He cannot fly, so he's unreleasable. He's a rehab bat. I apologize. I know I'm moving a lot here and trying to hold still.
He's beautiful.
He is a cute little guy. And you can see, I'm going to try and get it so you can see the tail. If I can hold still. I can't see him and the picture at the same time. Buddy. Here we go. Try the other hand. I usually put him on a glove just because it's easier for him to hold on. So yeah, he's not going to be able to show us his tail. It's a little hard to see the tail in this picture here. But the little tail there, you can see a little bit of the tail. It's kind of hanging out there. See that little tail hanging out?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. There's the tail. This is why they're called free-tailed bats, because the little tail hangs down past the membrane. So he's about 3. In the wild, this bat has a 12-inch wingspan. So he looks much larger when he's airborne than he does here in my fingers, in my hand. Come on, get up there. Sit still. He's doing circles and somersaults and hanging upside down. There you go. So hopefully in a year or so, when things settle down, we'll be able to do some more face-to-face programming, and I'll be able to show you guys the bats a little more personally. They are very, very, very sweet. They're very gentle little animals, and they're very easy for me to handle. Of course, we do not want anyone else handling wildlife of any kind. If you're not trained to handle wildlife, you shouldn't be handling any wildlife. And the reason for that, of course, is that you don't want to hurt the animal. Oftentimes, because these bats are really small, and they have very fine bones in their wings, people trying to rescue them or people trying to do the good deed oftentimes hurt the animal more than if they had just left it alone. So we do encourage people to call someone, or if you absolutely have to move a bat out of harm's way, you can get on our website at floridabats.org, and we have instructions in there, very detailed, very easy to follow instructions on how to get a bat out of your house. Lots of things. And of course, my phone number is all over that website, so you can always call me as well if you need to. This is the evening bat, a little bit different. Little different species. It's so hard for you guys to see. I'm sorry. I don't have a. Here we go. Maybe.
That's good.
Yeah. Evening bats are a little smaller than the free tails. They have kind of a funny angle.
There's a lot of interest on the bat houses in regards to cost, maintenance, and I believe you probably indicated on your website where we can actually purchase bat houses.
Yeah, actually we have, for those folks who are interested in building their own bat house, and it can be a great family project, especially if you have children. And especially if you have children that are home right now trying to, do virtual learning, sometimes they need a little bit of a break and they need a little bit of activity rather than just sitting at a computer. So on our website at floridabats.org, we do have the plans posted for our 3-chambered bat house. There's a cut sheet, materials list, detailed building instructions. I tell you on those instructions, the materials used as far as the paint, the type of paint and stain, the color, right down to everything. You can expect to spend about $50 to build a well-made bat house in materials, okay? If you bought a bat house from us and you wanted to put it up yourself, you could buy that 3-chambered bat house from us for $100. It's already built, painted, stained, and put together, and we take that $50 that we're charging you for that, and that goes into our conservation work. So that's one of the ways we support our field work. So we're really a funding stream for the Conservancy. The other thing you can do is you can buy a bat house from us, as I just mentioned, for $100. These 3-chambered bat houses are highly successful. They measure about 16 inches wide, 24 inches tall. They have 3 roosting chambers inside of them, and each of these houses will hold about 300 bats. So they're very effective. Bats love them. And it is certainly also when we have on our website as well, and also when we sell a bat house, the instructions on how to properly install it. Once we start doing installations again, if you wanted us to come and install the bat house for you, the installation cost turnkey is $400, and that includes an aluminum pipe, a pivot mount that we use at the bottom of the pipe so that the bat house can be easily relowered for maintenance in the future and then put back up again. Oftentimes we see beautifully made bat houses that are full of bats, and the concrete, the pipe is concreted into the dirt. And I always wonder how somebody's going to get up there to repaint that bat house in a few years when it's, 15 feet high. And what kind of ladder they're going to be hanging off of. So we like to make it so that the homeowner can lower the bat house to the ground level, do whatever maintenance is required, and then put it back up. And that's why we use that pivot mount. So again, that's the labor, that's everything. It's a turnkey operation there for installing the bat houses. Right now, we are not scheduling bat house installations until the first of the year. I have a long list, a backlog of bat houses to install in Central Florida right now. Around the Orlando area. And once I get that done, then I'll start scheduling for January.
Okay. Van had mentioned in his opening that we recently adopted the Wilton Manors Elementary School.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned kids, how appropriate would something like this be to have installed at the elementary school? Wouldn't you think?
Absolutely wonderful. We've got bat houses up at all kinds of schools and daycare centers and community centers and old people's homes and communities that, where there's I hate to say old people's homes because I'm one of those old people now. I qualify for that, but you know what I mean? Convalescence facilities, facilities where people have assisted living, varying degrees of disabilities or abilities. And some people can go out and putz around in the garden area and they have bat houses up. We probably have, I would say just off the top of my head, I probably have installed myself, my husband and I, we've probably installed 60 or 70 bat houses at schools all over Florida. For the last 15 years, and we've never had one single reported incident between a bat and a child. And what we have found is with bat houses on school grounds, of course, the bats don't come out of the bat house and emerge and start hunting until the school is closed at dark. So we see very little interaction between the school staff and the students and the bats. There's virtually none. But we also have found that by having bat houses on the property, the students are able to get a firsthand view of the importance of bats. And it sort of opens the dialogue and starts the conversation for the teaching staff and for the administrators to talk about wildlife in general, habitat restoration work, and how these wild animals actually don't have to have necessarily specialized places. They just need to have a dedicated space in our communities. And that's an important thing for us to remember. We aren't here by ourselves. We are here, in my opinion, through the grace of Mother Nature. And we need to be mindful that we're taking care of nature as well. So it is a great kind of an opening dialogue for students and gets them involved in research.
Excellent,
Yeah,
excellent.
schools are great places for bat houses.
That's a great suggestion. One last question, and then I have one comment from one of our members. The reason there's on the high mortality rate of the bats, what is the reason for their high mortality rate?
Well, bats have evolved over eons of time to have a high infant mortality rate. In a perfect world where there's no disturbance at all in a natural habitat, there is still going to be about a 50% mortality rate on pups. That is so bats don't overgrow the population and the habitat. They live a very long life and they reproduce once a year. So if a female free-tailed bat, for example, lives 15 years and she reproduces for 10 of those years, she doesn't necessarily need all 10 of those babies to survive to adulthood in order to replace her in the environment. So
right.
Mother Nature has kind of made it so that because there's so many natural predators that eat baby bats and old bats and sick bats and injured bats, it sort of balances the population, and the population grows, but it grows very, very slowly by design. So they don't overrun a population or overrun a habitat. God knows there's plenty of bugs for them to eat. There's never going to be a shortage, or there should never be a shortage of insect for the bats to eat. But keep in mind that we don't want the bats to eat all of the insects. We want insects there to fulfill their role in the habitat as well. You know, lots of people don't realize that mosquitoes are actually pollinators. And although we don't like mosquitoes very well, most of us are sensitive to their bites. They do carry some bloodborne and mosquito and illnesses, viruses, as well as parasites. We don't really like mosquitoes very much, but they're an important part of a habitat because they are pollinators of a lot of the large trees that we have in our landscape, particularly the male mosquito, which never bites anybody. It spends its entire life pollinating. So to eradicate mosquitoes would be to be removing an important pollinator for a lot of species. And so we don't really want to eradicate them. We really want them to be back in a natural balance with the rest of the habitat. Not too many of one thing, and not too few of another. And that's really what we're looking for. And bats are very good at doing that.
Okay, great. The last comment, and this is not a question, this is just kind of an announcement to everyone. Bob Mays, one of our members, built 2 bat houses. He said, according to the Bat Conservatory, a couple years back. He hasn't had a lot of luck in attracting bats. And he did ask you about this when you presented last time at the club. And you had indicated it was probably, they were too close to the tree and they need to be at least 20 feet away from any trees. Right. His proposal is that if there's any member out there that would like to have these bat houses, they are available, okay? So if
I'm sorry that he's given up on. He may just not have the right space. He may not have a clear opening. Yeah.
Well, we might find one for the school or for the park. Who knows?
Absolutely.
So, absolutely. So, yeah. Shari, I have no more questions. I cannot thank you enough. It was just as well. We would have loved to have had it live, as you know. We enjoyed the last time, and we'll look forward to again when we can do it live. And with that, I thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope everybody has a wonderful winter. Let's look forward to next year. Things have got to get better, right? This is all going to get improving from this point forward. I'm looking forward to 2021, as I'm sure everyone is.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and sign off and the meeting. And thank you all so much. I do appreciate your time and your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Shari.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Participants and members, just to be aware, for November, we will have Victor Lazari, who will be presenting Gertrude Jekyll and the Arts and Crafts Movement. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Van.
Excuse me. And thank you, Shari. That was a great, well, thanks to Shari, the moderator and the audience. Thank you very much for attending. That was a very interesting subject, very reassuring, especially about the spread of corona, right? Bats are okay. Screw Bram Stoker, right? That relationships between bats and the insect control and the health of our gardens are very, very illuminating. Thank you very much. I have no more to say. I'm certainly of any interest as that. So I'm just going to ask you to remember, if you haven't, go out and vote, right? Exercise your rights, right? Take control of your lives. Stay safe, stay healthy. I wish you all a good night. Sweet dreams. Good night. This meeting, I will adjourn.